Good morning and welcome to today's Chamber Winfluence event. I'm Nikki Devitt. For those of you who don't know me, president of the Petoskey Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I am very grateful that you could join us today. It was just about this time last year that the Chamber launched our Winfluence programming, the series of sessions aimed at building stronger businesses through education and enrichment. And then, well, I think we all know what happened. So while COVID restrictions paused and restarted our in-person efforts, we're very excited today marks the first in many virtual Winfluence events in the coming months as we continue to work to keep our businesses open and our communities safe. So we couldn't think of a better way to kick off these events than with our first in our Winfluence Remote Work Series, since many of us are still working remote. So Achieving Wellness in Your Workplace, featuring Damon Whitfield, physical therapist and owner of Harbor Springs Therapy and Wellness, is today's event. Now, before we get to the program, I do want to take a minute to thank Citizens National Bank, our Winfluence sponsor. And by doing that, I would like to invite Regina up to the stage. And this is where it always gets fun. So I'm allowing Regina to come on up and join me on this little virtual stage. There you are, dear.
Good morning. Thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. On behalf of Citizens National Bank, our president and CEO, Matthew Keene, and our vice president of marketing, Nancy Lindsay, it's an honor to partner with the Chamber on the Winfluence Educational Series. Citizens National Bank has the honor of celebrating our 90th anniversary this year of being Northern Michigan's community bank. We have been serving Sheboygan County from the same corner on Main Street in downtown Sheboygan for 90 years, and we look forward to growing our presence in Emmett County over the next 90 years. So CNB is my bank with financial solutions for you at home or for you in your workplace. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of my teammates to see how CNB can become your bank. So thank you so very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Regina, and we look forward to having you join us in more events. So now it is time for us to get things going. Damon, if you would join me on the stage. So we are extremely happy to have Damon Whitfield, physical therapist and owner of Harbor Springs Therapy and Wellness, with us. Damon has been a physical therapist for almost 20 years, originally from Charleston, South Carolina. He has been in Harbor Springs for the past 17 years. He has practiced in outpatient, inpatient, nursing home, and home health settings. He started Harbor Springs Therapy and Wellness 5 years ago as a mobile service providing physical therapy and personal training services to individuals in the area in the comfort of their own home, work setting, gym, outside, and more. He was also an area pioneer providing therapy services through telehealth a few years ago and continues to do so, and has been performing ergonomic assessments for traditional office as well as home office settings for the past 5 years. So thank you so much for joining us today, Damon. We really appreciate you. I'm going to turn it over and let you take the stage.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for having me. Thanks to Citizens National for sponsoring this great series. And shout out to Summer Poquette of Keep It Real Social. She had posted a question and tagged me about kids and home, working school stuff from home and needing some tips and tricks. Emily had commented in there, and Emily and Nikki apparently talked, and I got invited to do this. So thank you all for having me. And I jumped around a couple of tables. If anybody has questions, feel free to type them in the chat or the Q&A. I'll answer them as I go. I'm not really all that formal. So I want everybody to start off and take a couple deep breaths. Okay, just a couple of nice deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. What I want you to do is I want you to put a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly. As you take those deep breaths, I want you to notice which hand moves more, your chest hand or your belly hand. So just a couple of deep breaths. Which hand moves more, chest hand or your belly hand? Should be your belly hand. If it's your chest hand, you're using a lot of your what we call accessory muscles to lift your lungs and pull the air in. That's not as efficient. Your belly hand should be moving more. That's going to use your diaphragm to pull down on your lungs and pull the air into your lungs, okay? So that's number one important thing. I go through this with most all my patients, and it's a big thing with addressing posture and sitting is your breathing. So focus on that breathing, some nice deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, and focus on that belly breathing, okay? Bring my camera down here a little bit. Next is, once we work on your breathing, is your posture, okay? That's kind of the key for what we're doing here. And I tell everybody, I teach this stuff for a living. I find myself all slouched back like this and leaned over. So I'm not perfect, but I realize what I should do, so I'm able to fix it pretty quick. That's my goal with everybody, is to give you the tools to help fix yourself. I like to say I want to work myself out of a job that I don't have anything to do. Maybe not right now, but over time, I want to empower you to be able to fix yourself. Okay. So posture, we're going to be sitting to start with. So I want you to put your hands on your hips, and when I dip, you dip. No, different presentation. Put your hands on your hips, and I want you to slouch down. Some of you are probably already there. So now I want you to sit up really nice and tall. Now, as we go through this stuff, if you have any problems, if something bothers you, then stop, don't do anything. And that's not how I like to get patients. I'm happy to treat you, but that's not how I like to get my patients. So you can just listen. And before I forget all this, I've got a link of several YouTube videos that I did, kind of breaking this presentation down into things that I shared with Lisa and Nikki, and they will send it out, and it takes you to my YouTube page to go through these videos and some of this stuff broken down, okay? So hands on your hips. I want you to slouch down all the way, sit up all the way nice and tall, and now I want you to slouch back down, but don't let your hips move. That's hard to do, right? So if your hips are in a good position, the rest of you is going to be in a good position. We talk about our core and your center of gravity, and that's around your hips. So if that's in the good position, the rest of you is going to be in a position. Okay, so hands back on the hips, slouch back down, but stop just short of all the way down. Come back up, stop just short of all the way tall. Roll back down, stop just short, come back up. Keep kind of rolling back and forth until you stop. You should be somewhere in the middle. This is called your pelvic neutral position. And your pelvic neutral position is different than everybody else's. Yours right now is different than it was first thing this morning when you took the dog for a walk, or tonight whenever you work out. We're dynamic people, and you're meant to bend and move and twist. And so that pelvic neutral position changes with whatever you're doing. Okay, so sitting at your desk, we're going to work on getting that pelvic neutral position. Now, how do we keep that position? You've got to engage your core. Okay, everybody knows what your core is. I describe the core like a box. You've got your abs at the front of the box, your back muscles, back of the box, your obliques, your side abdominal muscles, sides of the box, diaphragm's the top of the box, pelvic floor is the bottom of the box. Everybody should know what your pelvic floor is and does. It's muscles you use to stop the flow of urine. So everybody should be able to contract their pelvic floor, and nobody should know what they're doing. It's not one of those type of contractions. That's how you contract your pelvic floor. I got a separate presentation for that later. We can work on some exercises. But everybody should be able to contract engage their core, okay? So pelvic neutral position, hands on your belly button, or where you'd like your belly button to be, where you think it should be. I've heard all kinds of stuff whenever I say that. So hands on your belly button, pull your belly button back from your hands. You're not sucking in like we do at the beach to impress everybody. I'm not doing that. Just engaging the muscles, pull the belly button back from the hands, okay? Slightly tighten up your cheeks, bottom cheeks, not top cheeks. Now, you've engaged your core, okay? Everybody hold that position into the presentation, go about your day. Everybody can do that, right? I'm sure most of you are shaking your head and laughing because we can't do that. But you can brush your teeth in the dark, right? Or you can be talking on the phone or reach over and grab your glass to get something to drink without having to watch yourself do it. Why can you do those things but not sit up tall and engage your core? Muscle memory habit. You've developed that habit to be able to do that, and that muscle memory to brush your teeth, you know what you're doing with that. keeping this good posture and engaging the core isn't something we as people practice enough. So it's something you have to really focus on, okay? So we talked about your breathing, breathe through the diaphragm, your posture, get that pelvic neutral position, engaging the core, okay? All right, now we're gonna talk about your position in your chair. And the same stuff goes for kids as well. We just have to modify for height and, little people versus us bigger people. But same thing for the kids. Now, whatever you're sitting on, a lot of people sit in office chairs. Some people are working from home at their dining room table, so you're in like a hard straight back chair. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to have a fancy, really expensive chair to get you where you need to be. I have people that sit on balls, boxes, the edge of a couch. It's more about your position and your control over the situation than what you're sitting on. But in general, whenever you're sitting, you want your hips and your knees and your ankles to be about 90 degrees, okay? So you're not sitting up really high. You're not sitting down low with your knees up in the air like this. That's not going to be good for you. So you sit and your hips and knees about 90 degrees, your ankles with your feet flat on the floor. Now, if you're shorter, you may have to, with the position of your desk, your feet may not be touching the ground. And for a little bit of time, that's not going to be that big a deal. But over time, gravity is going to pull on your legs. It's going to put stress on your back through the front of your hips. So you're going to need to have something to prop your feet up on. Yoga blocks are really good for that. They're light and they can move different places because we're going to use it standing as well. A box, a 4x4, something you can put underneath there. If you're at a desk where your feet can reach the wall in front of you, I tell people just to get a little piece of plywood and put it up at an angle so that your foot sits up on the plywood like that. Okay. All right. And being able to sit up comfortably is important. So making sure you've got that pelvic neutral position, you've engaged the core, you're sitting up straight in your desk or on your ball. I don't have my ball over here. It's down the way here, but sitting on a ball is good because you really can't slouch on the ball, because if you slouch, the ball's going to roll, you're going to move around. So it kind of forces you to sit up straight. Really good for kids if you can get the right size yoga exercise ball for them. You still want to be in about the same position, about that 90-90 position, but allows them to bounce a little bit or roll back and forth and gives them something to change their attention a little bit. Plus, it gives them some input and some activity if they're at home and not being able to be around all their friends at school. But once you're sitting, you've got that position. You can, what I tell people is, a lot of times you're sitting up straight like this, but sitting there too long, you're going to end up slouching or you're going to end up leaning back. So I tell people, forgive the crassness of this, if you will, but I want you to put your crack in the crack. So you've got that upright position. You're going to scoot all the way back to where your crack is in the crack of the chair. Okay. And then you can relax in that position. Now, if your chair goes really far back, you're going to need to adjust that so it doesn't fall back, because then you're reaching out here to the keyboard and that's not going to do you any good. So you can take a pillow and put back there, or something to take up a little bit of that space. Or like I said, just make sure that chair is up and you're not going to lean back. And then you can relax in that upright position with that good posture. And then you're set. You don't have to do all the work. You can relax the muscles and you still stay in that good position. Okay. Next, we'll talk about your position to the desk and your computer. So if you're in that 90-90 position, you should be able to rest your forearms on whatever, your kitchen table, your office desk, whatever you've got, resting your forearms on there without having to lift up or reach under. Think about like keyboard trays that are under a desk. You don't want to have to reach down low to a desk. You want to be able to reach straight out in front. Okay. Now, if you can't do that, then we need to start addressing your work position, because that's going to lead to neck and shoulder and all kinds of issues. So that's where you should be. If your hips and knees and your chair are in the right position, but your desk surface is either too low or too high, then we have to adjust either the chair to bring you up if your desk is too high, or we need to put something on the desk to bring the desk up if it's too low. Most of us have laptops at home. That's easy to move and you can stack up. I've got people that use, you grab a book off the shelf, then you grab another book, up to, paper boxes, anything to get your position where it needs to be. Okay. Now, distance from you don't want to be reaching way out to your keyboard, because then you're going to end up hiking your shoulders and leaning over. If you're like me, I can't type without looking at the keyboard. So if I'm sitting here right now, the way I've got this set up, I'm going to be leaning forward, putting a lot of stress on my neck, and I'm going to be like this. That's not going to be good. So I need to have that. I need to change that position to be able to allow myself a better position to reach the keyboard. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? We good? Okay. So you also need to be changing positions. If you're sitting for more than about a half hour, you need to stand up. If you need to stand to work, we need to be able to modify that workstation. But you shouldn't be in any one position for more than about a half hour. I tell the same thing to my carpenters and painters that I see as patients, guys that are up overhead. That's a lot of extension overhead work that need to take a break and be able to bend over, touch their toes, or do some opposite motion. Sitting is a flexion activity. We need to counter that with some extension, which is like leaning back, standing up. Same thing, like who drives downstate in one shot? I'm sure most everybody's shaking their head or raising their hand. What's the first thing you do when you get out the car? Usually it's stretch on the way to go to the bathroom, because you're not meant to be in that flexed position for that long. So I tell everybody you should be stopping at least once or twice on the way downstate. Just get out, walk around the car, do a couple of back bends, move around a little bit to help change that position. Same thing with working. If you've got something like this that you're watching, you don't have to be sitting down. You can tilt your screen and stand up. Great, do that. If you're on a call, speaking about calls, used to be we had regular big desk phones, and you could get the little spacers that went on there so you could hold it on your ear without leaning over. Well, our phones have gotten a lot better, but they've gotten smaller. So you tend to do this on your phone as you're talking and typing, and that can cause its own problem. So earbuds, headphones, something you can listen, and talk with the phone in a different place to not have to worry about that. Okay. Yeah. Listen to Lisa. Everyone stand up, move around for a minute. Resting your forearms. I have to elevate my forearms above the keyboard so my wrists are not flexed. Am I supposed to rest the forearms on the table? So I tell everybody, you control what you can control. You can control your position. There's only so much of your environment you can control. So if you have to have your forearms elevated above the keyboard, you probably want to try and have something underneath your wrists. Having your wrist up like this or bent like this isn't going to be good. You can get one of those gel pads to put underneath there. I'm from the South, so I can attest to this. I redneck things up a lot, and I just take a towel, take a little dish towel from the bathroom or from the kitchen, and roll it up, and that can fit under your wrist. Whether you're using your mouse a lot or the keyboard, you can support that under your wrist and give you some support here. So you want to keep your wrist in as much of a neutral position. So if you have to be elevated or you have to be down, you can adjust that more from your elbow and your shoulder and not have to do as much with your wrist. Okay. Does that make sense? Stretches we'll get to in just a minute. So I want to finish addressing the positions here. Thanks for the questions, though. So we've got Does that help, Laura, with the position there? You want to be able to support that wrist. And like I said, if you can move that closer or farther away, or change the height to make that neutral, great. If not, then get something underneath the wrist to support that, okay? So now changing positions. So we've got one more thing with sitting here. So a lot of times, like I said, I can't see the keyboard, or I can't type without looking at the keyboard. So I've got to have it pretty close to me. But the closer you get your laptop to you, the more tendency you have to bend over. So if you can keep that just far enough where you can look down with your eyes and up at the screen, back and forth, instead of having to move your head, that's going to be a lot better in the long run for your neck and shoulders. Your screens, a lot of times, some places at home, you've got fluorescent lights. A lot of offices have fluorescent lights overhead that have a strobe effect. The screens on our laptops have a strobe effect as well, and that can lead to eye fatigue. So if you just tilt your screen towards you just a little bit, it helps to cut down on some of that glare from overhead and leads to better or less eye fatigue, I should say. Okay. All right. So any questions about sitting? We've talked about your breathing, your posture, your pelvic neutral, addressing your position in the chair, addressing getting your feet propped up if you need to, the distance and the height of the keyboard. So I want to talk about standing up. So everyone should be able to stand up during their workday. Okay. Now I've got one of those fancy adjustable height desks that we've got here at the loft, which are really cool. They don't take up a ton of space, and I've got them for various clients and patients over time, where we've got different size ones to go in corner desks and whatever. But the same principles apply to the standing desk that we do sitting. So now we're standing, but the position of the desk still needs to be about where your forearms are parallel with the surface. So again, you don't want to have it, if I put this down, I'm having to now lean over and I'm standing like this. So it kind of defeats a lot of the purpose of the standing is leaning over like this. So I want to be up where my arms can be relatively level, and you don't want to be up too high because then you're going to hike your shoulders. So that's the great thing about these adjustable desks is they're pretty adjustable to making sure that you've got a lot of variability. Same thing, moving your laptop forward and back to allow your position with your wrists and forearms to keep the pressure off of your neck and shoulders. Now, standing, I always tell people you should start in a neutral stance. So feet about shoulder width apart. Some of us turn our feet out. Some of them are straight ahead. That's not as important. I just want you in a comfortable stance. That's kind of where we start from. Then I tell everybody to take a staggered stance where 1 foot's forward, 1 foot's back, just a little bit, a couple inches back to front and then side to side. That allows you to shift your weight. So think about standing in line at the grocery store. You're standing there at the cart, you kind of get stiff and tired just standing there. So a lot of people will shift their weight, either just rock side to side, or what I like to do is take this staggered stance so you can shift forward and back, especially if you're going to be really doing something, you're really engaged, you're typing, you're watching something, you're having to draw on a screen for something. Shifting that weight allows you to lean from your hips and not from your back. So if I'm standing with my feet together and I go to lean over, I tend to round my back. But if I've got my feet staggered, I can shift from my hips and shift my weight into that front leg and not have as much pressure and strain on my back, okay? And then you've got the 1 foot forward, you can switch, you've got your other foot forward, and you can move around. Other thing is putting your yoga block or whatever you've got your feet on underneath the desk, keeping that on the floor, and that allows you to put 1 foot up and then 1 foot down. So it allows you to change your position that way. I have a lot of patients that I've seen over the years that have whatever back, neck, shoulder pain in the kitchen, like washing dishes. Sinks are one height, we are varied heights. So leaning over just that little bit causes problems. So I tell them to open up the doors underneath the sink and put your foot up on the shelf underneath the sink. And that just allows you to off-weight your back and hip on the one side, allows you to change positions, and just gives you a little bit of a rest. So being able to prop your foot up on something underneath your desk when you're standing does the same thing. And again, I don't want you standing all day either. I want you to take a break, be able to sit down. That's why these adjustable desks are great. If not, if you can't do that, you've got your laptop at home. If you're sitting at the dining room table or the kitchen table, take it over to the island in the kitchen or the kitchen counter. And a lot of times that's a good height for most people. You may need to sit it up on something. So then a box, a couple of books, something that you can do that with and go from there. And it's, again, just about playing with that height to make sure that you're in that good position. Now, going through all of these things, sitting, standing, adjusting different things, remember what I said in the beginning. You control what you can control. You can control your breathing. You can control that pelvic neutral position in your posture. You can control engaging your core, and you can control the position of yourself in the chair or standing. You might not be able to control the position of the computer or the lighting, but if you can control as many variables as you can, you're going to significantly reduce the risk of injury for your work setting. Okay. All right. Any questions about the position and setup before we move on to some stretches and exercises and things to look out for? Good. All right. So I'll sit back down here. Bring this back down. So a lot of times I start with the head and neck. Okay. Typically easier thing to work on. So a lot of times when we're sitting, you tend to look like this and you get this curve in your neck. We do it driving, looking at the computer, whatever. So this ends up being a flexed position. We need to add some extension into it. So again, if you don't want to try these right now, if you've got neck problems or anything, don't do these. You can just watch and talk to your physical therapist about them if they're specific for you. There's my little disclaimer. But up nice and tall, I want you to put 2 fingers on your chin, and you're just going to push back nice and easy. And it's not a really big motion. I don't have any neck problems, and I'm not moving that far. If you do it right, you get the whole double chin thing, and it's okay for this exercise. I tell people, think about a turtle pulling its head in its shell. You're trying to pull straight back. You don't want to go back like this or down like this. It's straight back, okay? And you should feel a little bit of a pull in the back of your neck here. And you do 5 or 10 of them at a time. Next one is your shoulders. Turn this way a little bit. You're going to take your up tall. You're going to take your shoulders up towards your ears, squeeze your shoulder blades together, and then slide your shoulder blades down. So you're not going to move your head. It's all from the shoulders. Up, back, and down. When I tell people to go down, you don't just slouch forward. I tell people you want to try and keep those shoulder blades squeezed together, and you want to try and think about sliding your shoulder blades down in your back pockets. So you're going to engage your lat muscles, your muscles on the, sorry, I shouldn't have worn black in a black chair. These muscles over here, you want to engage those muscles to pull the shoulder blades down, okay? So up, back, and down. Nice and easy. The more you do that, excuse me, the more you do that, the more it works those muscles in the back. Just by the way we're made, we're forward-oriented people. We've got more efficient, stronger muscles to produce force this way than we do this way. So the muscles in the front tend to be stronger and tighter. The muscles in the back tend to be weaker and more stretched out. So the more we can do this, bring the head back, bring those shoulders up, back, and down, and keep that position, The more we do that during the day, the better that will be and will, like I said, decrease the risk of injury. Okay. Working on the mid back and low back, sitting in your chair, reach one hand on the arm of the chair. If you don't have arms, you can just kind of reach around and hold this way. Take your other hand and you're going to try and turn and reach behind you. So reach your hand over your shoulder, turn your head that way, reach behind, come back, turn the other way. And you'll notice that one side's tighter than the other. That's okay. It's not a big deal. That's the way your body is. Don't try and make them even. You go as far as you can comfortably on that one side. Okay. Again, 5 or 10 of those. Other things, sitting, you should be able to kick your legs out in front. If you can't go straight in front, turn to the side. And whenever you're sitting for long periods of time, another reason you want to get up and change positions is that gravity, lets all this fluid settle down in your lower legs. If you've sat for a long time or you've been on a flight or in a car for a long time and you get out the car, you notice that you're stiff, but you can have some swelling down in your ankles. That's because your heart pumps your blood throughout your body. You don't have a pump to bring the blood back, so your muscles act as that pump. So heart pumps the blood out, blood comes back through the veins, and you have little valves in the veins that open and close as the muscles contract. So think about your calf. When you're walking, your calf is contracting, so it pushes that fluid back up towards your heart through the veins, through all the valves. Well, if you're sitting for that long of time, your muscles aren't working that much. Some of that fluid is going to pool and settle down there. So just sitting, just kicking your leg out, kick your knee back and forth, do your ankle back and forth, roll around a couple circles, and squeeze your cheeks while you're sitting in the chair. That will help to use some of those muscles and give you less fatigue as you're sitting there. Okay. Wrists, big thing with wrists. A lot of people talk about carpal tunnel, wrist tendonitis. I always caution people. I've had patients in the past that have had carpal tunnel surgery and came to see me afterwards saying that it wasn't better and they still had problems. Well, the problem actually wasn't in the wrist. It was actually from an issue in the neck. And we've fixed the neck problem and they didn't actually need wrist surgery. Not saying that's for all the cases. I'm just saying to be cautious of that. I hate for you to have an unnecessary surgery. But a lot of times wrist issues come from the shoulder and the neck where there's pinching of the nerve up at the neck and you feel it down in the wrist. So just where this goes through most all in the body, just because you have pain in one place doesn't mean that's where the problem is. You need to look, we say upstream from there to make sure there's not a problem coming from somewhere else. But wrist specific issues and stretches, these will help benefit. A lot of times holding your wrist on the mouse or the keyboard in this position or up in this position is going to cause some strain and problems there, which you can feel in the wrist up into the elbow. So good, easy stretch to do. Again, this has worked for a lot of my patients in the past, a lot of my clients. You bend your wrist, hold pressure on your wrist, nice and easy, straighten out your elbow. Just straighten out your elbow just until you feel that pull. More isn't better with this. So if you feel it here, don't push to here thinking, I'll get it better. Just nice and easy, back and forth. Keep the pressure on the wrist, straighten the elbow out, come back, nice and easy, back and forth. Do the same thing with the wrist up and press out. You should feel a pull on the bottom side of the forearm, just nice and easy, back and forth like that. Okay. All these things 5 or 10 times. If you can incorporate them throughout your day, set reminders on your phone, put a sticky note on your laptop, set a reminder on your calendar, whatever you need to do. But if you can stop and work in a couple of these stretch and mobility breaks throughout the day, it'll make a huge difference in how you feel at the end of the day and long term as you're either working from home or hopefully when everybody gets back in the office like they want to be. And well, some of you might not want to be, I don't know. You can add these in throughout the day if you have making time to do that. Okay. Couple of easy neck stretches. Again, these are stretching the neck is always, you're always going to feel something. I don't want you to have any pain with this. You're going to feel some pulling and stretching. And again, if you have problems with it, make sure you consult your PT and ask them, or feel free to ask me. But take my left hand, put it in the small of my back, take my right hand, reach across my head towards my ear, head stays in the middle, and nice and easy, I'm going to pull my right ear down to my right shoulder. Nice and easy as you do that. You should feel a little bit of a pull over here. You shouldn't feel any pinching the way you're stretching. If you feel pinching on this side, then this might not be the best stretch for you. You need to have something looked at. And just nice and easy. I'm a big fan of what we call dynamic stretching. So you stretch and hold, and you're moving back and forth. You're not pulling and holding for 30 seconds. There's places for that. I'm just not a big fan of that for doing something like this. So hold for a second, back up, pull over. Make sure when you do that, you're not pulling your whole body over. You're just pulling the head. Okay. Both sides, same thing. And again, like this side's tighter for me. I'm not trying to make this side equal to the other side. Just nice and easy, back and forth. Stretch as much as you can comfortably. Okay. Next one is what I call the deodorant test. So I'm going to take my left hand, reach up towards my left shoulder blade, turn my head to the right, take my right hand, reach through the middle of my head. Now I'm trying to pull my nose down towards my armpit, hence the deodorant test. And it's not a really big motion, but you should feel, by positioning your hand here and pulling your head, you should feel a stretch kind of down the back of your neck here. A lot of times what gets tight whenever we sit like this, you can imagine, I shorten that distance now between the bottom of my head and my shoulders. We need to stretch that out. That's a good stretch to do. Okay. And just make sure that you're not being overly aggressive and doing anything really significant. No pain, no gains, not the philosophy. More isn't better with this. Okay. I know we have a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure I have any time for any other questions if you want. But just to review, breathing more through your belly than through your chest. This is a good one to do not at work, just sitting on the couch at night or in the morning when you're waiting for your coffee. Try and work on some deep breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, focusing on the belly hand moving more than the chest hand. Okay. That pelvic neutral position, roll the hips up and down, find that middle position and engage the core, pull the belly button back from the hands, slightly tighten up the cheeks. Easy way to engage the core. And then from there, address your sitting position, 90 degrees at the hips and knees. Make sure the feet are either neutral or supported if you need to. Making sure you change position at least every half hour. And if you're in the middle of writing something or drawing something for a project and you need to be in that position, fine. Just be mindful of your posture and your position. Stand up, same position, forearms on the desk or up on your work surface. And if you're standing, should be relatively neutral, so you're not hiking your shoulders. Make sure you support your wrist if you need to with a towel or one of those gel wrist guards. Use your yoga block or something to stand. Alter your foot position when you're standing. We went through the stretches. Whenever you're standing, I want to make sure that you take time to lean back. So nice and easy, hands on your hips, and just lean back, nice and easy. Now, if you've been sitting for a while and you go to stand up and do that, you may have a little bit of a pinching or pain in the back. As long as it's locally right there, that's just from changing positions. It's like first thing in the morning when you stretch. It's a little uncomfortable. That's okay. Pain, numbness, tingling, sharp pain, that's not good. You need to, come see one of us and we can assess what the problem is. But after you've been sitting for that long, doing some extension is going to be good for that. Now, we don't need to make you do a back walkover or anything like that. Just nice and easy to counter that flexion position we had in sitting. All right. I know we've got Just a couple minutes left. So if anybody's got any specific questions here, I'm happy to answer them. I think Nikki put my email address in there. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if anybody needs a specific consult for a workplace or a group of people, I'm happy to do that as well. Any questions?
I think we've got them all. Any tips? Oh, there we go. On standing and working.
Yes, you should do that.
Okay.
So the big thing with standing is, again, making sure that your height of your workspace is appropriate, and then taking that staggered stance and changing your position, putting your foot up on something. Is that what you're looking for? Are you looking for anything specific?
I think too, I'd follow up with Emily's question on if you're moving about. So if you're doing a standing desk, which a lot of people do have, or as you suggested, using your kitchen counter if you're working from home, which I think is the best tip, because I found that was the hardest thing working from home, was not being able to stand up when I wanted to. Is there a balanced ratio to using that variable stand to sit?
About every half hour. I don't want you standing for more than about a half hour either, because things are going to get stressed and pulling different ways. So you should be able to sit down or take a break. If you're going to be standing for most of the day, then either take a break and sit down if you can't change your workstation, or sit down, pull your knee up to your chest, bend over, touch your toes, something like that. Yeah. So to avoid stress, we should just not work. Right. Yeah. Emily, I saw your other question, Emily, about the plantar fasciitis. So people that don't know what plantar fasciitis and foot pain is, standing for a long period of time, your plantar fascia is on the bottom of your feet, thick band of tissue, and standing for a long period of time can spread that out. And you can get some pain for that. Actually, if you're going to be at home, I recommend being barefoot as much as you can. That allows your body to accommodate and take over and work the muscles in the bottom of the feet. Whenever you're brushing your teeth in the morning, up on your toes and heels, just back and forth like that. That helps to work on those muscles in the arches of the foot and give you some stability that way. If your feet are hurting at the end of the day after standing, take a golf ball and put it in the freezer. Whenever you sit on the couch, put your foot on the golf ball and just roll up and down with your foot. And that cold and massage helps to decrease some of the irritation and inflammation in the bottom of the foot. Does that help?
That's good advice. Nikki asks, what about hip pain from sitting so long?
Don't sit.
Move.
A lot of times, so if you're sitting, and I mean, joking aside, you should be changing positions every half hour. But if you're having hip pain sitting, and especially if it's one-sided hip pain, you definitely want to get it checked out. But sometimes raising your chair up just a little bit so your hips are actually open a little more than 90 degrees, or if you scoot up towards the edge of the chair so your knees drop down just a little bit below your hips. A lot of times, the way people are made, you can get some pinching in the front of the hip joint, and that can cause you some pain. But if it's one-sided, if it's not both sides, you might need to get it looked at. You might have something that's really tight on that one side. You might have an issue with one of the muscles in the low back. But in general, that should help. If you scoot up and get your knees down just below your hips, a lot of times that'll help alleviate that. Okay.
Excellent. Well, we're going to send everybody back to the floor for a few minutes so that you have a couple more minutes to actually chat if you would like to. And then if you want to find Damon in the floor plan, go for it and ask him a question, or as we drop the email in, we will be sending you a recording of this presentation as well as a link to Damon's YouTube page and some more information. So feel free to reach out for him if you need more. Thank you so much, Damon. We really appreciate it. That was great. All good information we need right now until whether we're in the office or not. I think it's a good reminder for many of us to move more for sure. So we appreciate it. we have great events coming. We hope to see you at them. We have a dual business after hours on Wednesday the 17th at 5:30 on Remo, as well as our great State of the Community coming up as well. We have member check-ins. We have another Connecting Women in Business. We have some fantastic business builders programs and more Winfluence. So just stay up to date on our website, PetoskeyChamber.com. And Damon, thank you once again. And everyone, we'll see you on the floor.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.